Analog horror has been a frequent topic on this channel, mostly because I just find the creativity and freedom this medium gives its creators so freeing, and seeing the horrific creations some of these people come up with has been an absolute treat. Nevertheless, there's always been one series, despite being the characters, that I've wanted to cover. A series that's been so influential to me with its ideas and concepts that's even bled into my own creative process with my own characters. Most notably with Seacat and Lily, which anyone who frequents my streams or has seen the Doodles channel on my Discord will immediately recognize. And yet, despite this, I've held off on talking about the series because I personally feel waiting until a piece of content or media is in its completed final form should be the only time I cover it, unless I'm just really excited about it. The series I'm referencing is The Man in the Suit, a Godzilla analog horror taking inspiration from pretty much every piece of media to portray the character, and combining them into one bone-chilling character. It's a series so good that despite me never having watched any single Godzilla outside of a couple of the MonsterVerse movies, that it got me to watch Godzilla Minus One, and I'm currently looking for a legal way to watch Shin Godzilla, as I've been told that's the main inspiration for The Man in the Suit. All of this to say that Unknowingly series has been like an itch in my brain that I can't fully get rid of. I just keep coming back to it over and over, waiting till the time comes that I can talk about it. So you may be wondering, why now? Well, it all comes down to its unfortunate cancellation. I don't want to get into details because while everything I know is publicly available information, I personally feel that it's just not my place to speak about it. But because of all this, The Man in the Suit has been shelved, leaving its incomplete 12-episode run ending on a massive cliffhanger that I just cannot wait to talk about. But before that, I want to highly recommend checking out the series in its entirety and watching the pilot for Unknowingly's new series, Mechanical Instinct, with this one being based off murder drones, and just one episode in, I'm already hooked and frothing at the mouth for more, like hands and knees, please Unknowingly. So with all that said, what is The Man in the Suit? The Man in the Suit first released just under 2 years ago in July of 2023, centering around the original Godzilla movies where the monsters were actual physical suits worn by people rather than CGI monsters. The series also heavily relies on real-world events and the gaps in information surrounding the original Godzilla movie's production, and I love this overlap. It's such a fun concept to see how something so mundane as poor record keeping can spiral into something so horrific. But I'm getting ahead of myself already because I just want to talk about this so much, like, oh my god. Like I do with most series I cover, I want to go episode by episode, share my thoughts and theories, and just rip apart every piece of information presented in the episodes. So strap in, because I have a feeling this is gonna be one long video, because there is just so much to talk about as we delve into the mystery of The Man in the Suit. Now, I do want to preface, because I think my wording was a little vague, no, none of this really happened. When I say that the series relies on real-world events, I mean that The Man in the Suit uses things such as on-set accidents or, as mentioned, poor record keeping to inspire and tell its story. No real people are named, and the events presented are almost entirely fictional. Now with that said, we can move into the first video in the series, titled Godzilla Sue Incident 1954. The tape starts with a distorted version of the original Godzilla theme, twisted in such a way that it almost sounds like laughing in the build-up stages, as the screen fades to a scene of Godzilla towering over a set, with flames burning in the background providing the only source of illumination. Then, suddenly, it all stops, and the screen switches to an image of Godzilla, or as the series calls him, Gojira, the original Japanese name for the character. Unlike most analog horror, for most of its runtime, The Man in the Suit prefers to use text to tell its story rather than having any voice acting. The text on screen reads, "The person in the Gojira suit was unknown at the time, but the story the actor has with Gojira is odd." We're then shown a couple of other photos of the actor performing as Gojira, where we learn that the actor fell in love with both the character and being able to wear the suit, with one Toho producer stating, "He would wear the suit most of the time, to the point that you never saw his actual face." Which is kinda weird, but I suppose method actors exist, so who are they to judge? A fellow actor commented that even when we take breaks, he would just wear the suit. The suit would sometimes heat up, but he didn't care. With another producer stating, "It was like he was addicted to the suit, like if it was calling his name." The comments would then only get more and more concerning from here. with the co-director stating that the actor would bring the suit home, and another one of his fellow actors stated that he wouldn't talk to anyone and would only respond to the name of Goji, which was the nickname given to the suit. And while all of this is really concerning from an outside perspective, the only time anyone acted upon the issue was when Goji was acting on set until he just stopped in the middle of his performance. The music in the background then begins to ramp up, and after several minutes, it stated that he would start to walk and then stop in place, with his breathing becoming muffled and odd. Everyone on set at this point thought it was a joke, and the director attempted to poke him back into place. But Goji wouldn't budge, and it was at this point the director would tell people to check on him and make sure he takes that suit off. But upon attempting to open the suit, Goji's flesh would begin to slowly rip away as they tried to open the pocket where the actor would enter the suit, as the suit was now his skin. We're then shown a diagram of what they expected to find, a person nestled within the suit as it should have been. But what they found was something completely unexpected. This was the scene that caught my eye the most out of these earlier episodes. While visually the series is fairly bland and uninteresting, with it being a bunch of black, white, and brown images of Godzilla and some people, it's the build-up and storytelling that makes it so good and so haunting. Everything starts pretty standard. Everyone thinks he's just taking the role really seriously and giving his all. The actors, producers, even the directors all think he's having a laugh and keeping the set lively. What they could have never expected was that the man's flesh, bones, and organs would all fuse into the suit, stretching and deforming in unnatural ways with no clear explanation as to why. However, there is one piece of information we can gather from both the description and the video itself, as we can see blinking you miss it glitch showing in an image with text. From what I could find, this roughly translates to, "Godzilla may be a monster, but it seems different to me. He is rather our god, controlling our world according to each other, and I will be the meat of the beast. I will be the host of Godzilla." This to me is an acclamation, a want, a desire, and a plea to something beyond our understanding to allow whatever happened to the actor playing Godzilla to happen under everyone's noses. And in all honesty, if this series had ended right there and then, and just been a one-off, it still works as such a fun and disturbing series, and I honestly have nothing but praise to give the storytelling, especially with how it takes the mundane reality of these images and twists it. On the real world side of things, from what I can find, this was actually based on real events, where during filming they needed to trigger some explosions on the suit. But this instead caused the actor to be electrocuted, and luckily he was okay after getting some medical treatment. But it's just the creativity it takes to go from that to what we see here is awe-inspiring, and I just love it so much from a creativity and storytelling standpoint. And luckily, this isn't even close to the end. So let's move on to the next video, titled Gdora Sue Incident 1955, that can hopefully shed some light on what's really happening. This tape focuses on a sequel film to Godzilla, titled Godzilla Raids Again, centering around his fight with Anguirus. Who's this little guy? Look how silly he is, oh my god. From what I can tell, the video actually begins with footage from that film's trailer. That is, until it glitches out, and we're back to the usual text format. Here, we learned that instead of, making another suit and swapping out the actor, they instead decided to keep the man in the suit on for future movies. They did this for two reasons: to avoid being publicly ridiculed and sued for keeping him, but to also bank off the success of the original film. Their ultimate goal, however, was to find out how this even happened, as after being examined by private doctors, the best they had come up with was that it might have been a pill he took, but they couldn't know for certain. The only thing they did know was how he ended up like that, as his body would have inflated and melted within the suit, causing the skin to become the exterior of the costume, which he can actually feel, like have full sensory input on, which is and this would have also caused his bones to rearrange themselves within the suit, which is such an unsettling visual, and it just makes me feel weird even talking about it. Like, that has to be such a painful and disgusting process. We also learned that Godzilla's eyes can actually be seen outside of the suit, but instead of them being normal, they were extremely bloodshot and were provided with this horrific image. We then learn a little bit about Anguirus' actor, where despite him having to act alongside Goji, they decided not to tell him anything about him out of just complete negligence. We're then told that throughout the filming process, Gojira was actually really cooperative, even after losing his vocal cords and only communicating with noises like an animal. We're then told that pretty much everything involving the movie and Goji's performance would go great. That was until the very last scene, where Godzilla and Anguirus would need to fight. And this scene is just so eerily quiet. There's no music and no screaming like you would expect from a fully edited film. Instead, it's just the sound of the actors moving and props collapsing with the occasional roar from what I can only assume to be Goji, as he slams Anguirus into a building and would bite into his neck. The video freezes here and we learn that this action was not a part of the script, and Goji was actually biting down on the actor's head, with him screaming out in pain and moments later would stop moving. The crew, acting quickly, would try and approach the Anguirus suit and help him out, but Goji would roar at anyone who came close and was acting territorial with the suit, protecting it. Eventually, the Anguirus actor would wake up, but he would start to shake violently on the ground, struggling to stand up. Goji would then allow the crew to approach, and they feared the worst as they helped him up and tried to take off the suit, finding that it wouldn't budge. We were then provided an image of Goji taken as he was protecting Anguirus, with his piercing eyes staring directly into the camera, his jaw shaped almost like a smile, and we hear this unsettling, almost roar-like noise emanating before everything fades to black. We're then brought to a familiar scene as we see a diagram of what they expected to find, the Anguirus actor safely within the suit. And it's here we get another image with text, this time accompanied by an inverted image of Goji doing that same expression, except this time you can see a set of human teeth lying in the center behind his fangs. The text, presumably from Goji, reads,
"Wake up. You have a purpose. Stop trying to stop the inevitable."
We then see what they found within the Anguirus suit. A mass of flesh and much more bone than Goji ever had, explaining Anguirus' struggle to stand earlier. This time, the image is accompanied by silence, and instead of loud sounds and glitches, we're only given text for a split second that reads, "Help me." Now, I love this so much simply for how it contrasts Goji's embrace of the transformation, with Anguirus having this change forced upon him, with it causing him immense pain and distress, with the only words he can muster being "help me." It's so chilling and again, such a fun subversion. But this isn't the last we hear from Anguirus in this video, as there's an entire conversation between Goji and Anguirus in the description that reads as follows.
"Help me. Someone help me. It hurts. It hurts so much. It hurts. I can't get out. Please help me. Oh God." "There's no God. Just me. Don't worry. I will make you whole again. You lost your family. That's why I take revenge. Kill those who have wronged us." "Who are you?" "It's Goji. Only Goji."
This conversation between the two actors is really revealing. How it happened we don't know, considering neither of them have vocal cords, but it's so haunting just to read Anguirus' cries for help, as unlike Goji who rejoiced becoming this creature, Anguirus is feeling all the pain and fear of being trapped inside of the suit. There's one line here that's really revealing to me on what Goji's plan is, as the line, "You lost your family, that's why I take revenge," seems to relate to the nukes dropped on Japan during World War II, which most of us know inspired the creators of Godzilla to make the character as a warning against those kind of weapons and the mass destruction they could cause. I interpret this line as being about Goji's family. Maybe he lost people in the attacks and wants to take revenge using the Godzilla characters, due to some boiling hatred against the US for these attacks, and turning the Anguirus actor into one of these creatures is the first step to building an army powerful enough to enact his revenge, which if true is a really interesting concept, an absolutely haunting twist on what the character stands for, and I love it. The only thing I don't necessarily enjoy about this episode is that it's a lot of tell and not show. I personally prefer to be shown things, be able to draw my own conclusions, rather than being told so much information at once. But considering its early days for both the series and Unkowingly as a creator, I can't be too annoyed. Speaking of, just seeing the absolute leaps and bounds and improvements that Unkowingly has made in storytelling and presentation from the last episode, despite the series at this point being still just a couple of videos and images and text, it's still such a good piece of horror with all the implications, the descriptions of events, and the sound design. And we only learn more about these creatures with the next video titled Depiction of Gross 1962. Now, I want to say that I'm covering this series in the order Unkowingly is provided within their playlist. If I were to follow the timeline, we would be at The Trial of the Suit 1958, which is actually the 5th episode that was released. So while it's all a bit confusing, I just want to stick with the playlist in order for ease of viewing. Why didn't he just do timeline for a release order, I will never know, but Unkowingly has put these videos in this order for a reason, so here we are. This video is an interesting one, however, as it appears we're both swapping perspectives and gaining a protagonist. Text appears stating,
I was startled by my first encounter with the man in the suit. It made me more curious than ever. It might harm me for doing this, but I need answers. So I've gone to one of my friends who is smart with this stuff. I won't name her, so I'll call her Eliza. I called her, but she was in the middle of teaching her class. However, she still called me back because of how curious she was. She'd never seen anything like this.
We then learned that our protagonist recorded Eliza's findings, and I just want to let this be heard because it is downright terrifying.
The thing is, whatever this was caused wasn't from a pill. This is something else. Oh God, this is the work of radiation. Holy shit. The man in the suit doesn't fuse with the suit instantly. His body explodes in the suit, then it reshapes itself in the suit. How do I explain this? Imagine a cream-filled donut. Without the cream, it's mostly a flat donut. That was the suit before, but because of the filling. The man, it basically filled up all the space. But him and a cream-filled donut are different. The cream and donut are separate entities. There is a barrier so they don't mix. The man in the suit, however, his skin, his flesh, his bones, it's fusing with the suit. His teeth would be the suit's. Whatever he took. It's mutating him. It's making him more like a creature than a human. Soon he will have animalistic properties, like using its teeth more effectively, and would be able to control his tail. You said his eyes could move, and that they are bloodshot? But in this photo, his eyes flashed back. Human eyes don't do that. You need to try and put him down. If not, it is probably too late for mankind.
Well, that's a great thing to hear. It seems the 2 takes before this were our main character gathering information to send to Eliza. And now we know the man in the suit is evolving, changing, and capable of triggering these changes in others just from coming in contact with him. And as stated later in the video, there is no stopping point for the mutation, as Eliza gives the protagonist a description, and he has 3 drawings made of what the man in the suit could become. The first 2 drawings are accompanied by a droning noise, whereas the last image we can hear someone speaking in what I think is Japanese. However, captions don't pick it up and it's really heavily distorted, so I'm not really sure. But what I am sure of is that the description provided aligns with the following dialogue from Goji.
I am not a monster. I will help you all. I will kill those who have wronged me. Those who murdered my family. Those who support them. You. You killed my family. Monsters.
This seems to confirm my earlier theory that Goji's motives are tied to the nuclear attacks. But that's all I've really got to say, but I do want to highlight the vivid description provided on how the man in the suit became, well, the man in the suit. There's the concept of never-ending evolution, which, don't worry everyone, I've watched Shin Godzilla at this point and I loved it, and I can see why it's the main inspiration now. Because if it's following the ideas in that movie, this can end up as a horrific monster. There's also the idea of just straight up exploding like a water balloon and then having your body melt and meld into the suit, all while being alive, which sounds horrifying, and it's once again these descriptions I want to praise from Unkowingly, and hope to see this same level maintained within Mechanical Instinct. But that's all there really is for this one, so let's move on to a slightly longer video titled Trial of the Suit 1958. This video begins with our protagonist informing us they snuck into Toho after their encounter with Goji, and they found a tape that seems to take place years after the Gdora Sue Incident. The text in this video is really hard to read and strains my eyes, but it essentially reveals that the team is aware of everything happening with Goji and Anguirus, and they're currently doing their best to train them almost like circus animals. Currently, they have the man in the suit in a cell, and the video provided shows them running tests on Goji using audio. And apparently, Goji is sat there reciting an Oppenheimer quote, which, I don't know man, the only line I heard was "I am become death, the destroyer of worlds," which also makes no sense because he can't even talk right now, cause bro doesn't have vocal cords, he is not built like the rest of us, how is he talking? Nevertheless, we hear Goji roaring that then slowly morphs into people's screams. The video then glitches and we're shown a completely dark shot. Then, a song would begin to play, titled Honto ni Sonara, I've totally butchered that, Jesus Christ. But what's important here is that Goji would slowly approach the camera without making a sound. His body, and specifically his face, much more morphed and changed in comparison to his last appearance in Gdora Sue Incident, with the music eventually cutting off and Goji lying in wait. Looking at this episode as a whole, I find the inclusion of Oppenheimer's speech here really interesting and pretty downright creepy with the whole "I am become death" line, showing the man in the suit's mentality. He at this point believes he is the ultimate life form, something that will take revenge, something constantly changing and evolving. One thing I want to comment on was that the last bit where Goji slowly approaches the camera, I personally was waiting for Goji to just run at the camera for it to destroy it, for anything to happen. But instead, he just slowly and patiently approached the camera, not a care in the world. And that is much more effective than a jump scare, because it really feels like a pit in your stomach and you cannot let your guard down for a second or you'll get jump scared. I keep saying it, but Unkowingly cinematography, his storytelling, everything is so good when it comes to this series, and I will say it 1,000 times more if I have to. However, I'm hesitant to say that this video is done just yet, because the video directly after, titled Mailed Message 1962, appears to be pretty much a direct sequel to the last video. In this video, we learned that the video we're about to view was mailed somewhere by our protagonist, and they don't think it was made by someone at Toho. The video in question consists of a bunch of text that have been translated to English, reading,
"You don't understand. You killed my family. You Americans cheered when we lost. We lost our homes. We lost our families. You nuked us. The nuke took my wife. The nuke took my kids. Hiroshima was our home. I left for a business trip. You took everything from me. So I decided to return peace by getting rid of the people who wronged us."
We then see Godzilla rise from the tree lines before vanishing, and we're left with a single image of Goji where his eyes stare directly at us before cutting to his image, which, I mean, it's not your best work Unkowingly, especially with the FNAF 4 sound effect, but hey, we all stumble once or twice. However, this video overall works to simply flesh out the man in the suit's origins. And that's where I'm gonna stop you right here, Core. See, while doing a little bit more research, I learned there's actually a video meant to come before this and after the trial of the suit, titled Godzilla Encounter 1962, and I feel it's fitting to put it right here. Why couldn't I find it earlier, you ask? Well, you see, Toho has actually blocked the video globally, except for the US, Canada, Ireland, South Africa, Israel, and Puerto Rico, for copyrighted materials apparently, which is really funny considering the series as a whole. But guess who found an unblocked re-upload? The video begins with a trailer for the movie King Kong vs. Godzilla, where America's #1 monster would clash against Japan's, and we see a poster for exactly that on screen. This is accompanied by text, but because I don't have a VPN and can't access the video's comments, I wouldn't even know where to begin translating it, But please, if you know, tell me in the comments. I'm really interested to what that might say. The video then continues by saying that the man in the suit was once again the only Godzilla suit for literally no reason. Toho, you're pulling in hundreds of millions. Lock this guy in a cage and get another suit. It will solve all your problems, I swear. Nevertheless, we learned that because King Kong was an American film, the man in the suit wasn't very happy. We learned our protagonist was actually a cameraman on set, and they had told him everything about the man in the suit, but he was ordered to stay quiet or he will be arrested. We're once again told the man in the suit wasn't very happy about making an American film, especially after they forced him to look more child-friendly for the cameras. All of this be accompanied by an image of Godzilla and King Kong's suit stood together, where we're told that Goji hated the actor in the King Kong suit, who was being played by another Japanese actor, whose name I'm gonna butcher, but I'm just gonna say Hiroshi, where Goji viewed him as a traitor for betraying an American monster. The crew of course knew this and would treat him like a lion in a zoo, restraining him and keeping him on a tight leash. But it was at this point that there was only one more scene left to film, and our protagonist was instructed to not stop filming. The script was that after destroying a big building, Goji would pretend to use his atomic breath on King Kong, but as most things would go around Goji, it didn't work out that way. And this is where the story diverges from real life, as instead of King Kong winning and rising from the water with Godzilla swimming away, this time Goji would toss King Kong off a cliff, and the cameraman would have to record it all, as after their struggle, only one of them would rise from the water, and we see Goji stood in Kong's place, smiling. Our protagonist, rightly horrified and not wanting to know what had become of the King Kong actor, grabbed another cameraman and ran away. His goal was to go outside, get some air, and calm himself, but while attempting to leave the long corridors of the Toho studio, he would hear screams coming from the set as the power would shut off. Our cameraman would attempt to use a flash on his camera to look around, only to hear footsteps walking towards him. It would take a picture to see who was ahead of him, only it would turn out that it wasn't an employee. Text on screen would roughly translate to traitor or betrayer. Now sadly that's all I've got, as again the original is blocked in my region and any wikis surrounding the man in the suit are sorely lacking in a lot of information, so I have no clue if there was anything in the description or not, but these last few videos have been an absolute treat to watch, showing how this man brewing with hatred has become a beast filled with power, a bomb waiting to explode. There's also the thought of why not turn Kong into a monster? If you hate America so much, why not force their star monster to your side, forcing Toho to take him in? Am I crazy for thinking this? Maybe it's just the blind hatred Goji has for America, but that was the obvious play. He did it to Anguirus, so why not Kong? However, there's another aspect that hasn't been explored too much, and that's Goji's mutations. And I'm hoping we get to learn a lot more about that in the next few videos, as next up is Dorsal Extraction 1962. Dorsal Extraction begins with our protagonist receiving two hastily prepared letters from Toho. The first explains that the package from the previous tapes wasn't from Toho, despite the mailing address indicating otherwise. The second letter informs him that he's been fired. Fortunately, this isn't the end of his journey, as he managed to recruit a spy inside of Toho who has been sending him photos and tapes of ongoing events. Recently, the spy sent him a tape titled Dorsal Extraction, featuring the message,
"We will try to get him out of the suit. We are unsure if this is gonna work."
We then see a tape of the man in the suit from the side, where someone approaches and rips off one of the dorsals on his back. And despite the glitchy screaming and banging, the tape claims,
"He was very cooperative. We thought it would hurt him, but it didn't. The results are fantastic."
We're then shown the man in the suit regenerating a dorsal, which is new because while we knew he could mutate, there was nothing about regeneration, which would make him nearly impossible to kill if he's allowed to evolve to that point. We are then told that after 2 minutes, Goji would attack a man with a camera. However, we learn a weakness. Goji's eyes are sensitive and bright flashes hurt his eyes. We then see a few more photos taken before ending on this shot of Goji with his mouth wide open. The text and description of this episode reads,
I'm beautiful in the dark.
Now, many of you might be wondering what happened to Anguirus. I was as well. Bro vanished for like the last, 6-7 tapes? And here is our answer, as our protagonist found a tape related to exactly that, with the text in it reading,
We have tried our best to comply with the other person mutated in the suit, but his persistence hurts our finances. People want to see him, but he doesn't want to be seen.
And that's it, leaving both us and our protagonist confused until they learned that the next movie was supposed to be Goji versus the man in the Anguirus suit. But Toho's version of complying with Anguirus was teaching him tricks like a dog and provided the only photo our protagonist has of him. Toho has plans to force him to perform using tasers and other forms of persuasion. The tape then ends with one last piece of information, with the spy telling our protagonist that there's another movie in the works.
Something about Gojira battling a giant moth?
And the final frame of the video shows Mothra. Yeah, baby, my goat Mothra, let's go! Honestly, this was a tape that was really needed. After the King Kong tape, we knew that they were being forceful, but not to the extent of forcing them to perform no matter the measures. And after what happened to Anguirus, just let the poor guy die at this point. He doesn't want to be seen, he doesn't want to be here. And sadly, there's one more tape before we get to my goat Mothra, titled Rare Newspaper, 1964. Right off the bat, this has been my second favorite episode in the entire series, and really shows this turning point from the man in the suit going from cool concept to meh execution to one of the most creative and thought-provoking analog horror series I've ever watched. This episode starts our protagonist wishing he could leave Japan, but with all he knows, he will probably be arrested. He's too deep into the rabbit hole and is too entangled with this mess to the point that even if he tried to leave, he just couldn't. And things only keep getting worse, as during the filming of the next movie, Goji escapes. And how does our protagonist notice? Because it was in the news, with witnesses reporting seeing a creature that resembles a lanky and tall Godzilla.
One late night, a couple started to travel home as the husband took some photos. The husband was a photographer and thought that taking a picture of the road would be inspiration to his next photo piece. One of the photos captured this.
We then learned that later that night, a young boy also saw Godzilla and took not one photo, but multiple from all different angles. Interviewers would later question the kid and ask him to draw a picture of the creature, but the kid would comment that he had seen the movies with his dad on TV, and what he saw was not Godzilla.
The beast's skin looked fake yet real, very uncanny. I don't think it was a creature. It might have been some man in a suit? I don't know how I can explain his face. It somehow kept changing. I think it's because of the lack of sleep.
We then see a drawing the child made showing one of Goji's faces, depicting his sunken eyes, lean figure, and smile. Toho got wind of this pretty fast and played it off as a promotion for the next movie, and somehow managed to stop the story from ever being printed again. And our protagonist has the same question as all of us right now. What was Goji doing outside? How did Goji get outside? Did Toho recapture him? If not, where is he now?
This place. The outside air. The cars. The windows. The house. Did they just move on? Will we forget?
This video starts like most of them do, with a trailer of the movie it's based on. Only this time, everything is shown in an intense black and red filter before cutting off, and we learn what happened in the time Goji was out. His appearance was due to him being covered in a paste to give him a new look. He also had contacts to hide his bloodshot eyes, and was exposed to high winds and tossed around like a circus animal. We then learned that Toho had done their first smart thing in the series, and decided that Goji would be fighting a puppet and not someone in a suit. This successfully tricked Goji for most of the filming into believing that it was a person within a puppet. And as such, Goji behaved exactly as expected. But there was one flaw in Toho's plan. Someone would need to be inside the larva suits. And instead of doing miniatures or puppets again, one female actor thought it was a good idea to be in the suit due to how much security they had. And once she was in the suit, something snapped inside of Goji, as he would rush towards the monster puppet in the same way he did Anguirus. But once he bit into it, and realized it was a puppet, he became pissed, and rushed at the woman in the larva suit. We're then shown a diagram of what happened. The woman would attempt to hide deeper within the suit, but Goji would continue charging into the larva, ripping it apart until he could bite into her head, with the actor's parents witnessing everything. Their first instinct was to try and intervene, but Goji would maul them and begin protecting the larva. But the crew was ready this time, using tasers and lights to scare him away from the suit. And this is what caused Goji to break out of the studio. Hours later, they would find Goji in a forest, wandering and looking at nature. For the first time, they commented that he looked calm. But when he spotted his captors, he would go back to normal, and once realizing he was surrounded, his body would begin twitching and vibrating until he vomited up this boiling red blood, and we see a steaming puddle Goji left in his wake. And once he was secured, the team feared the worst, that once they returned, the crew couldn't get the actor out of the larva, and we see that all so familiar scene again, only this time, they expected to find her body exploded within the suit and her bones stretched sporadically, but instead, they found the actor cocooned to the ceiling. Now, this video has to be one of the few in the series that really deeply disturbed me, mainly for that ending scene. We knew previously that the actors were mutating and eventually they would take on some elements of their monster form, but seeing how this poor woman immediately cocooned herself, instantly losing her humanity and becoming the monster is haunting because they didn't even get a chance to recover her body. There's also the really interesting segment of Goji wandering in nature. For the first time, he was calm. He was away from Godzilla, away from the sets of Toho and the cities to remind him of the attacks. For the first time, he was alone, wandering peacefully away from his pains and struggles. And it's as beautiful as it is depressing, knowing that all he wants is his own peace, but his own grudges and Toho's greed pushed him to become a monster. And this would be his breaking point. As the description would say, Goji is now reborn, going into the last 2 episodes of the series, starting with 7 updates, 1964. This video is pretty much where everything hits the fan, and as the title suggests, 7 major developments have happened. First off, that the government is talking to Toho about the cocoon, and Goji being in the news.
We already made our deal whenever it bit into the Anguirus actor. Yes, but we as a company don't want this anymore. Too late. It was your fault you made the second movie, and the one after that. I get it, but why even keep it alive? Why do you have to keep it? That's classified information. But why must we keep it? If we took it and someone sees the abomination, both of us are going to fall. But if you do it, we'll be in your favor. We don't want to scare the public. Interesting. Besides, the deal was that we kept quiet if you supply us enough yen from your kaiju movies. What I'm confused about is whenever you took him to do audio tests in 1956, there was a tape that was misplaced with speech that angered him. It was some sort of misinput. You were positive. Yes. Why must you make our company associated with it? Like the logo and everything? Didn't I tell you that answer? I apologize. Forgiven. Just wanted to inform you that we have a script in the works about a movie with a free-headed monster. And if you have another incident, don't worry, this costume will be fitted with some puppeteering, thicker skin made from material that he can't chomp on. We'll be good. Good. And if other incidents happen, you will be stuck to make another suit for Gojira, hire a new suit actor, and make sure that suit is sanitized and clean. And what would you do with the man in the suit? That's classified information.
We then learn exactly what the cocoon is doing, as upon attempts to remove it, it began spraying an orange gas that was presumably radioactive or poisonous. So Toho evacuated the area with no casualties, and kept the cocoon for what our protagonist assumes is study purposes. Which is stupid, like cop on Toho, put on a gas mask and a hazmat suit and get rid of the damn thing. And just like me, our protagonist is also pissed off about this, because it's these stupid ideas and mistakes that are causing people's deaths. The third thing is that scientists took a look at the man in the suit's blood puddle thingy. They expected to find the same thing as last time, except it seems like the puddle has grown and is now steaming, requiring hazmat suits to even get close to it. Upon getting a closer look, they immediately shut down the area and we get our fourth point, that someone saw an eyeball in the puddle, but they just couldn't confirm it. The fifth point is that they're going to make another movie, and judging by the conversation between the government and Toho, it seems to be centered around Ghidorah. Next we learn our protagonist has a family, with his daughter drawing him a picture of their family. The version we see has every single name blacked out, but it's clear our protagonist has been forced to hide and abandon them, but as he says himself, he misses them. Finally, we get concept art of Ghidorah, and our protagonist says that he wants to intervene next time the man in the suit makes a move. Now, this episode is very information heavy and overall just a lot of exposition. The only new information we get is that the government is extorting Toho and has plans for Goji, which is weird, but okay government, you do you. There's also the puddle, which seems to once again reinforce the Shin Godzilla connection, and I'm loving this, like everything about it and how everything's unfolding, as we get into the last and best episode in the series, Gdora Sue Incident, 1964. We all know the drill by now. The video starts with a trailer for the movie at hand, except this time it doesn't glitch out to nothingness, and instead seems to stutter and be overall scattered before we learn about the production of the film. We're told that Toho wants to be more careful during filming, with their plan to use a half-puppet, half-suit Ghidorah in order to confuse Goji. They also want to make it have a material resistant to Goji, and any attacks he may have, including biting or blood. However, we're not privy to the exact resources. All we know is that the lower half is where the actor will be, and that will be reinforced, but the heads would be puppets. We're also told any other kaiju present during the film would also be puppets to avoid another larva incident. Our protagonist once again states that he wants to intervene, and holy shit that's a shotgun, okay damn, didn't know bro was strapped like that, and holy shit chat, a sensible human being in an analog horror series wants to use a shotgun to put down Goji? Bro, I'll help you, say the word and I'll blast him as well. It's then shown that presumably Toho has changed Goji's appearance again, but honestly if the series continued, I would have loved it to have been revealed that Goji was actually changing his appearance to both avoid suspicion from the public, but also make himself more powerful. Going back to their plan, like always, Toho was overly confident, and it would all come down to that last scene, and this is where the tape seems to glitch out an insane amount. We're told that Goji couldn't possibly attack the actor directly due to the reinforced material. However, due to their poor planning once again, the suit actually left the actor's head and hands as the most vulnerable parts of the body. And yeah, real smart fellas, leave the part Goji has attacked the most as the least reinforced part. Got ya. During this final shot, Goji would suddenly stop before beginning to shake violently. The crew knew what was going on and tried to intervene, but the Ghidorah actor got too close to Goji and he would attack, biting into the suit head and puking its boiling red blood down the suit, trapping the actor inside and cooking him alive. It was only then that our protagonist would enter the studio and the crew stopped him.
Where have you been? Wasn't I fired? You never were.
We then see an overhead diagram of the set showing Goji, Ghidorah, and a power box, along with the cameraman and a crew member alongside our protagonist. Goji, once finished with Ghidorah, rushed over to the power box.
It all happened so fast.
But what else can I say here other than holy shit? Not only is this the best made episode of the series, but it's also the most horrific it has ever been, and god, I wish we had gotten more. While you have the classic Toho being stupid plotline, there are two things from this episode I really want to discuss. First of all is that very brief conversation between the crew and our protagonist. If you remember back to Dorsal Extraction, the package and letter that told him he was fired both came from Toho, and said everything else he received hadn't. Yet, those two items seemed hastily put together, and if I had to assume using all the evidence here, I think it was Goji who sent those packages. There aren't really any other suspects, especially considering that he wasn't really fired. Maybe Goji knew our protagonist knew too much and wanted to keep him as far away as possible. But that's all we really have to go off of. The second bit I want to talk about is that spectacular ending to this video. It's so claustrophobic being trapped in not only this smaller aspect ratio, but also these tight corridors where all you can hear is spotty breathing and what sounds like footsteps or wet chewing, especially once our protagonist is seen by Goji and he begins chasing, only to have Goji be shot and you finally let your guard down to see Goji's decapitated body, and then it grows back in mere seconds, because as the description says, you can't kill a god, and that's exactly what Goji is now. He has evolved past the point of death. He can create life and regenerate, and there is nothing left that can stop him. He is an unstoppable killing machine born out of hatred and allowed to thrive due to Toho's hubris. And while there are so many unsolved plotlines surrounding everything here, with the way it is now, I think this is a fantastic end, because it leaves your mind wandering. There are so many directions for this series to go, and leaving it here, intentionally or not, is horrific. And I keep bringing it up, but you can see how everything Unkowingly has learned from the man in the suit is being applied to Mechanical Instinct. Because in my personal opinion, that series has so much more charm and is honestly a lot more interesting to me. And while I do feel it's much less terrifying than the man in the suit, it's a piece of media I'm waiting to cover once more episodes come out. Cause there are like 3 episodes out right now, and one's a trailer and there's a puzzle for episode 2, so we'll just wait and see. But that's all I've got to say about the man in the suit, and I hope you can see now why I love this series for just its creativity and subtle use and mastery of horror. It has some fantastic storytelling, and things are looking bright for Unkowingly. I just hope that no matter what, he keeps creating, because besides Darian Quilloy, Unkowingly is someone I'm keeping a very close eye on when it comes to analog horror, especially when it comes to inspiration and expanding on my own ideas. But that's really it, I don't know what else to say. Thank you all for watching, subscribe to the channel, I don't know, that's something people say, and I'll see you whenever I make next. Bye bye!